You are allowing your bigotry to hold you back from success in the RPG industry. Let's talk about that. Goodman Games, in association with BackerKit, are hosting an indie RPG creator summit of some kind. Doubtless you've already seen a lot of commentary on it on online RPG circles, but I'm egotistical enough to think that I have a worthwhile take on the whole thing as well.
Bring me the boar worms.
Why was this controversial? Well, when they first presented it, they included 12 creators who were, the gasp, all white men, mostly of a certain age. Now, some of them might be LGBT, or Jewish, or from some other white minority, but certainly visually, they all appeared to be, standard issue, white male, Midwesterner sort of appearance, I suppose. And so a certain quarter of the RPG scene then lost their collective shit, conjured up some systemic racism from this fact, and demanded to know why women and minorities, also present on the panels, weren't present in the featured images.
That is a cunt move.
Now, Goodman immediately caved, and they put out a new promotional image presenting almost nothing but women and minorities. And it's rumoured, but I haven't seen it confirmed anywhere, that panels and things have been moved around or changed to give greater prominence and priority to those women and minorities. But here's the thing. This is meant to be advice and guidance for indie RPG creators who want to succeed. Alright? Now, I know of about half the people who were first presented on the first promotional image without having to go and look them up on Google. On the second promotional image, I know literally none of the people being presented. Not a single solitary one. Now, I'm bad with names and associating names with products, so yeah, it's anecdotal, it's not a great test, but it's a test, and if you want to be successful in indie RPG design, wouldn't you want advice and insight from recognizable people who have been successful, right?
Tell me more about this man Houdini.
Why would their identitarian category be remotely important compared to their level of success and experience? And who is more likely to attract attention to such a panel to make it viable and even profitable, perhaps? Who would provide that audience? Known names in the industry, or nobodies who've maybe put out a zine once or twice?
That ain't the invisible cunt.
The RPG industry has never been systemically or endemically racist or any other bigotry that you want to bring up. You will find gamers all around the world of every colour, every stripe, every description. There were assumptions made about this. To take one example, the African American community, and to a lesser extent the West Indian community here in the UK, the pressures that stopped people joining in with role-playing came from within their own community far more than anyone else. It was seen as white people shit on top of being nerdy shit. And we are all slaves to history. It takes maybe a decade, maybe a generation to establish a career and become niche famous. So the hobby used to be a lot more white and a lot more male, still is to a very large extent, but this is not for want of trying to be different. So the people who are most noticeable, most experienced now come from a time before Critical Role, before all of these changes. In fact, they helped usher in those changes. Gen X, like myself perhaps, are now in the ascendant, and in our time we were purposefully colourblind and otherwise apathetic towards identity politics. That was lame, gay, identitarian shit for skinheads and militias. It wasn't for us. You care about your race? God, how uncool are you?
Men were real men, women were real women, and small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri were real small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri.
The boomers that are still hanging on, they come from the generation that fought for civil rights, legalised pot, women's lib, Both generations worked hard to welcome a more diverse crowd into the hobby, only to be turned on and treated like shit.
Now this really pisses me off to no end.
That's a great way to make enemies. An all-white, all-male appearing panel is simply the result of demography and time, that it takes time to have experience that you can then impart onto others. But these are the very best people placed to help you, whoever you are, whether you're a person of colour, LGBT, or whatever. These are the people who can help you succeed, not so much other noobs. Instead of soliciting advice and assistance from them and learning from them how to succeed and to become that next generation of known designers and so on, instead you harangue them, have a spasm of anti-white racism, anti-male rhetoric and so on, ageism as well, in the comments under the original post, forcing Goodman to back down, change everything. You create enemies for yourself, you create skepticism towards your cause, and the whole thing now feels a lot less likely to be successful in terms of both attendance and outcome because of what you've done. And you're hamstringing your own chances of success by excluding the people best placed to help you succeed, in preference for no name, no nothing, blank ciphers who just happen to have the right identity categories, just not the experience or anything useful that could help you succeed.
Hey, you tell me, how come it's not safe to walk in Central Park, huh? Or give a stranger a lift anymore? Because the world's full of crazy people, Jack. Hoodlums.
That's going to slow down representation. That's going to slow down success. It is not going to speed it up. And it is boggling to me that a generation and a subculture so dead set against prejudice and bigotry, at least rhetorically, displays it as much or more than any Trumpist deplorable or Faragian anti-immigrant populist.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So much so, they even changed the meaning of words and definitions to try and excuse their own bad behaviour in this arena, and never seem to cotton on to how self-sabotaging this inactivism is.
Isn't that rather unethical behaviour?
Oh, is it? I'm afraid I'm a bit out of touch.
Yeah, Goodman, in my not so humble opinion, made a mistake, pandering to people, backing down to people who will almost certainly never buy anything of theirs anyway. And it's going to, somewhat unfairly, cost them business from yet another chunk of their core audience, who are going to remember this. But the real tragedy to me is the self-ghettoization of the strident activist creators. Look, incestuous sympathy buys from people exactly like you is only going to get you so far.
And I write novels.
Yeah, he writes them in crayon.
Though I haven't had any published yet. So I better warn you, I'm in a mean mood.
And that's something that's also happening in your opposite numbers as well lately. with people defining themselves as an anti-woke or whatever. If you want to succeed, I mean, really succeed, you need to listen to the experience and the expertise of others and then translate that into your own position and your own experience to create your own expertise. Even if that advice comes from, horror of horrors, old cisgender white men. Also, hey Goodman, I'm a mentally ill cripple with non-standard sexual proclivities. Hire me.
Furry.
The world is full of terrible erotica, exacerbated by the existence of the internet and the low barrier to entry. And no, it's not just men describing women in terms of how their boobies jiggle. Now you too can churn out cringeworthy, barely literate erotic nonsense with filthy shades cliché. 2 players, one the dom, one the sub, fill out bingo cards with awful words and props, and then try to fit them into their purple prose over several rounds of foreplay, sex, and aftermath. Whoever scores the most by working their words into their florid gibberish wins. This game was knocked up in an afternoon, but it only cost 50 cents, so bite me. Available at DriveThruRPG and post-mort.com.